Yo, what's going on, people? Welcome back to the channel. The final region we get to discuss is arguably the best region. It's the Americas. And not only the best because the level of Counter-Strike is obviously very good, I'm going to be involved in it. If you're watching this, if the Americas are starting tomorrow, whenever it is, I will be on the broadcast. Make sure you swing by. You don't want to miss it. Either way, America's broadcast, overview, and fantasy. We're going to run through a few bits before we get underway. We did the Asia one. It's gone quite well so far. We're down at the time of recording to the last day, and fantasy's popping off. Everyone's gone positive so far. MIQ pickup, CS by Trav done really, really well. So all things considered, no complaints. But let's get underway in towards the Americas. Start off with a little overview of what we've got in terms of the teams. Of course, for those who are a little new in terms of the format, basically with the Americas, 16 teams, top 5 make it through. Nice and easy. Simple as that. These are teams we've got. It's a Swiss system as well for this one. It's really easy, basically, when it comes down to it. We'll have a little run through some of the teams first. We'll kickstart with that. So we'll go in order of seeding, in order of where they are ranked overall currently in the world. So Complexity. I think Complexity for me feel like probably the favorite to go 3-0. I think they are the favorite to go 3-0. Absolutely coming in towards this, the top team looking into it in terms of results, in terms of the level in which they are domestically speaking. Of course, Complexity are one of the more kind of fewer teams in this qualifier who actually get a lot of international practice. The team looks really good, man. Everything has been slotted into place. They've had the hiccups. You know, we had this period where Complexity were ranked 6th in the world, I think was their peak, and they were really putting on monstrous performances. Dipped off a little in form, but I think generally speaking, Complexity is still, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best team here. They should make this one look very, very easy. Elige is the big man we're looking towards, of course. But I've got to give a lot of credit to JT, man. I really think this guy has started to call a serious masterclass. I think, and I'll come to this at some point in another video, of all the teams in their transition from CSGO to CS2, I think Complexity were one of, if not, the biggest upgrade in that change to CS2. They were, like barely like a top 20 team in Go at the tail end of Go, coming in towards CS2. We're talking making it to finals of S-tier events. We're talking, like we said, ranked 6th in the world. Complexity, there's a lot to like, man. I really do think this team have done super well in terms of how they've come about and how they've come together. Now moving on to Furia. Honestly, and this might sound a little bit outlandish, I think Furia are on a little bit of fraud watch. I think you got to keep an eye on this team. Fallen has not been playing well. As much as I'd love to see, the professor himself play well. He has recently kind of speaking, not looked too good. I think he's averaging like a 1.01 rating. It's not been pretty. They're very reliant on Caterato doing well. And I think that can be just a big risk, right? Relying on one guy to pull you into something every single time feels... it feels pretty awkward. Art as well, the calling style, there's been a lot of people calling for his head for a long time on this team, especially considering the wealth of IGLs. You look at some of the guys who've played on Pain previously, which we'll come to a little bit later in terms of who could have taken his spot, but haven't, right? So there's been a few people calling for his head. I think the real guy to keep an eye out in probably a bad way is Fallen. I'm just a little bit concerned. Online, not look too good. In the online, they've looked a little shaky, a little rough around the edges. Moving on to MLBR. MLBR, I do like this team a lot. I think there's a lot to like about this team. Insanity is, without a doubt, one of the best young riflers kind of coming through the ranks. He's looked so good. He continues to be such an animal. MLBR, I think, one of those teams that I would be surprised if they came to this sort of tournament and didn't play well. I do always have my reservations, though, about MLBR. I think Drop can... you hate to use it, but he can really drop off in form. He's had these real up and down, inconsistent moments. He concerns me a little bit. I think it's probably the way I'm going to go about it. I'm not completely sold on MLBR yet in terms of being uber confident the way I am at Complexity, but I think they've got a very decent chance. And like I said, they're one of the few teams that have actually international experience, which when you go back to domestic regions, when you go back to playing in the Americas, which has its fair amount of problems within the domestic scene in terms of kind of practicing and scrims and all the rest, I think that can be a real help. Getting time in Europe, getting time to play practicing scrims against either the top end of tier 2 or even kind of in towards those tier 1 teams really can make a difference. Moving on towards Liquid, of course, this is probably the team that I feel like most people, everyone's kind of most excited about. Liquid, they've gone back to this NA core of a team, or this America's core of a team, I guess you could call it. It's exciting times, man. You know, they obviously picked up Cadian after the old debacle at Heroic. And, you know, bless him. He deserves it after kind of what happened with Stabby and all of the rest. This team is good. There's a couple of question marks. I'll show you one of the question marks, actually, in particular. Let me just drag this here. Look what happened. No, where's it? Here we go. Yesterday. So they did get it in the rematch, so it's okay. But, you know, there is little bits of concerns. At 13-3, it was not a pretty map. It was not a pretty map at all. It was actually quite a good game to watch, I have to be said. They were on fire. I mean, putting up 2 rounds only on your CT side is simply not good enough. I worry about Cadian's form as well. You can see here, actually, good example. He really hasn't looked too good. I mean, if you go into Liquid specifically and look at roster, he has looked a little bit, you know, below the rest. Granted, it's not actually too bad overall, but just keep an eye on Cadian. I think we'll come to it when we get towards the fantasy. If you are thinking about picking Cadian in your AWPA or your IGL, I'd be hesitant. I'd keep an eye on it. Maybe domestically in terms of the America scene, he can be all right. He's looked a little rough around the edges. Granted, they did actually end up making it through the qual. They qualified towards Dallas, which is good to see. You know, everyone wants to see Liquid there, probably, the biggest organization in terms of kind of NA history. So, I mean, it's Cloud9, but not so much anymore these days. But one of the biggest who've been, around for basically the majority of CS going into CS2. M80, what a sad story for M80, man. This team, when the pickup came, everything looked beautiful. They brought in Slacks as well as a replacement AWPA for Wolfie. Everything was looking so good for M80. And then, unfortunately for them, obviously completely out of their control. Personal issues to do with Manx. And they now don't have their IGL, the guy who is the glue to this team, heading into one of the most important tournaments they've ever played. It really is super unfortunate. I think with Manx and in the form they were in, this team qualified, no doubt. But now without Manx and with Def playing, I love my UK boys. I'm always going to support Def, but he's averaging like a 0.5 rating on T-sides. It's not exactly singing praises at the moment. It's tough to say the least. I would love to see M80 go through. I really think it's doubtful. I know Def has spoken about it a little bit on Twitter, talking about they're waiting and looking for options in terms of an IGL. It's not easy. Finding an IGL to replace Manx, who felt like the perfect pick for this M80 team, it really is tough, man. I think that is a huge loss for them, and I really do hope they can make something out of it and at least learn something. Keep an eye on Malbs. Very good player. Love Malbs for a long, long time. This guy's always been a menace. Swisher as well. Super talented individual. And Slacks is an amazing AWPer, especially when you look at your fantasy as well. Something to keep an eye on. Slacks is good. The only thing that worries me is I don't know how many wins this team's actually going to get. So we shall see. Imperial, another team that are actually, for me, I'm liking this version of Imperial more and more than I like the previous iteration, the big name Imperial with Fallen and the rest. I like this Imperial. So 2 guys to keep an eye on, the kind of 2 newer names there of Decency and No Way. There were 2 youngsters, kind of puggers, playing a lot within kind of the domestic region. Like I said, just more in a puggy nature. And they've been brought under the experience of Henny Phelps and Vinny. And honestly, they look really good. They've slotted into this system so well. The individuals are brilliant. Mechanically, they're phenomenal. So I really am looking forward to seeing what Imperial can do. I think, genuinely, for me, I would consider them in that qualification bracket. I think they genuinely can pull off something here. If Decency and No Way can play on LAN. Now, that's the big kind of stipulation here. Decency and No Way have very limited LAN experience. So in a LAN of this sort of caliber, you don't know what the nerves are going to like. You don't know how they're going to feel. I'd keep an eye on those 2. If they play the way they played online, man, they could really cause a ruckus here at the RMR. However, you always have to just be a little hesitant when they are a little LAN inexperienced. Not that they've never played a LAN, it's just of this caliber and how many you've got under your belt, it really does make a difference. Also, another thing, of course, just having Zach as the coach. I really like that pickup. Obviously, when they went through a few changes here, there, and everywhere, Zach, he's been with them for a decent while now, but I really do like Zach as a coach. He's someone who has been around the scene for a long, long time, and I think he really can help No Way and Decency. Beastia. Now, there's a lot to like in this team. Luchov is the main man we're going to look towards on Beastia. He's a very talented individual. Deco has his moments as well. He does drop up in form in these little inconsistent moments. The real guy that I'm worried about is Noxy. Now, Beastia have this problem where they could have... I'll show you, actually. If you look at their roster history. Now, Beastia had Lucan on this team. And Lucan was doing pretty well, as you can see. Noxie took Lucan's roles, and it's now a bit of a weird situation where Beastia feel, I don't know, they feel in flux, right? Orping is not looking good for this team at all. Noxie mechanically is not there. Maybe calling wise he is, but you know, this does feel a little bit like Art at times at the tier 1 level where he is, you know, so vastly different to the rest of his team. Or probably, I guess, more fundamentally, someone like an Advent, kind of not as bad. That's, you know, let me just put it out there. But, you know, he really does struggle, Noxie. He looked kind of past it in terms of his ability. And also to note as well, Zoe, the coach, has come in, first time ever coaching, brand new to the role. He was with the team previously, but then their previous coach, Pino is his name, is now the GM. And Zote, who was the assistant, is now the coach. And then they've got an assistant coach, which is called Chucky, but not the Chucky from Legacy, Chucky with a K. Very weird, very weird. It's confusing. You don't need to focus on that. But yeah, you know what? You get what I'm saying out here. This team, while they come in as actually one of the higher rated teams, I'm not sold. I'm not 100% sold. Mayan has his moments. I'll give him that. But Noxie's the real worrying point for me. So we'll see. I'm definitely not putting them in my top 5 at the moment. I am a little bit concerned, a little worried for them, but we'll see. We'll see. Nouns, on the other hand, I'm not. I love this team. This team is so fun to watch. I already showed you the victory they got over Liquid. Granted, it didn't happen the second time around as Liquid came through that lower bracket, but, you know, when it matters most, you hate to see it. But what I gotta say, Nouns is a team that have recently picked it up massively. Junior is looking amazing. Junior's back, man. This guy really does look super talented these days. He started to find the form. I think it's safe to say that tenure in Furia was a confidence issue. It feels like now he's got his confidence back. He's looking great, man. This guy looks seriously talented. I'm a big fan of him. I think Carson's talented as well. This guy really can step up in a big way. But for me, my man, Marky, that is the guy that I want to focus on this team. You know, we'll get to Fancy later. He's going in. I don't care how much he is. This guy is so sick. I love Marky. He's so reliable. And he's done it for years now. And I'm glad that he continues to put up numbers. I think Nouns are actually... I feel like a dark horse is actually, you know, it's kind of a rude way of saying it. I think the team can qualify. The team have the ability and the quality. Also, it shows Semphis as the coach. They've also got a Dren as well. So they've got... I don't actually know how it's going to work, who's actually going to be behind them, but they did tweet that Adren is coming in as a coach, and Adren has been working with them. So in terms of strategically, that's a huge addition to this Nouns team. It shows the team they're investing in the right way. I'm not sure. I'm assuming Semphis is going to be behind them because he usually is, but I know they do have Adren in the ranks now, so I don't know whether he's like assistant coach. They didn't actually specify. They just said he's coming in to help coach. So we'll see. But either way, great addition. I think he really can help this team out a lot. I've been liking what I've seen out of Nouns recently, so keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on them. I think they can do something. Wildcard, same for them. I really also think they can do something here. Stanislaw seems to be back. Not only mechanically does he look a little bit more alive than he had, you know, the entirety of EG. Let's not beat around the bush here. But honestly, this team around them is really, really talented. I think the main man that I'm going to look towards and who's going to be the guy to make a difference is between two. Sonic, I think, can make a massive difference. He likes to be a little bit self-sufficient as a rifler. Obviously, he's played at a high level within the scene for, you know, a while. Obviously, playing alongside all these guys here on Complexity, like JT and TC. But the main man is Jaber. This kid is so talented. And Stanislaw has given him a lot of space and a lot of mileage as both on the T and the CT side, just to kind of play how he wants, play comfortably, which is really good. You know, you see these youngsters come through the ranks in North America and they can very easily be confined to like anchor roles or rotate roles, which aren't always the prettiest. Jaber's given leeway. He's given a lot of these hero positions. He's given a lot of the space to do what he wants, and it's working. He's a very, very talented rifler. I really do think for the future, he's definitely one to keep an eye out for the America scene, and also one to keep an eye out for at the RMR. He actually could cause some damage. The only issue I've been having recently, I've casted quite a bit of Wildcard recently, and the only issue I have is Slight. Now, Slight's the AWPer, and he's looked a little rough, man. He doesn't really look, at least for what I've seen recently, he looks a little bit all over the place. Normally, the biggest problem that I've seen with him is not actually his mechanics. He actually can hit shots quite well. It's his positioning. He always gets caught out of position time and time again, whether it's him on rotations, whether it's him playing anchoring on towards sites on CT. He's always being caught off guard, and that's letting him down. And he's being forced into these situations where to bail him out of these situations, he has to pull off these ridiculous flicks. Granted, he can hit them, but having to confine yourself to that only can be quite concerning. So Slight is a bit of a worry for me. He's not looked all that just yet. So we'll see. I also really like Infinite as well. Obviously, Infinite's a bit of a stalwart of the America scene. Has been good for ages. Moving on to Elevate. Now, Elevate, previously known as Timberman, previously known as Badass, etc., etc. This core of a team have stuck together for ages. Shane, Dare, and Snav have been together for a long time, and Peeping as well. You know, love them or hate them, man, they get results. Right? This team's actually pretty good. They qualified to Blasphemous Showdown with, honestly, some really decent results, especially that one over NRG was pretty damn solid, and the Twitter game was even better. I have to give them credit. They beat Wildcard when it mattered most in terms of qualification too. So, hey man, say what you want about Elevate. You can talk about their history and they're very, you know, their catalog of errors, which, yeah, you know, we'll leave it at that. However, they're very good. I think Snav has really come into his own in terms of calling, especially in that Blast qual. I end up doing the basically majority of it alongside Davey. Snav is really starting to step up his calling. I saw him about 6 months ago, and it really wasn't all that. You could see this side which is getting not even just out-aimed, but just out-called every single time. But Snav has stepped it up in a big way. I think Shane is very talented as well. Really, really solid player. Definitely can do a lot of damage with a rifle if he's given the opportunities. So I wouldn't sleep on Elevate. I wouldn't be putting them in my 5 to qualify, but I think they can make at least a decent run. I would be very surprised if they didn't get a win. Bar one factor. Dia, as you can see there, isn't going to be playing, or at least the information we've had or we've been told is that he's not going to be playing. His passport's being stolen, apparently. I don't know who steals a passport, but fair enough. His passport's been stolen, so he's not going to be playing, and they're now playing with GB or something along those lines. I forget his name off the top of my head. That's pretty bad, but I'll show you here. Where is it? Where is it? Elevate? No, somewhere here. Something about, basically, he's not playing, essentially, because he lost his passport. It's kind of unfortunate. I forget the guy. Oh, MBG. That's his name. NBG. Sorry, not JB. Close enough. MBG's playing. MBG's not all that. Last time he was playing on this team, and the reason he got dropped, he was a little rough, man. He was not putting up any sort of performances they want to see. Dia's a big loss. Dia online, at the very least, we haven't really seen this guy play LAN, but online, Dia's looks so solid with the AWP. He is... Yeah, you hate to use the term, but he's elevated this team massively. They have become actually a real kind of stalwart, the upper echelon of the North American scene, right? And they're putting up very good performances, and the loss of him, I think, is going to hurt this team a lot. I'm assuming that Dare is going to then pick up the AWP, and then MBG is going to then just take anchor roles. I don't know, man. It doesn't feel great. This team looks like, with the loss of Dare, they might be a little bit all over the place. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not holding out too much hope without Dia. If they had Dia, I generally think they could have done some damage and pushed toward, maybe not qualify, but at least push towards it. But yeah, the loss of him is big. Moving on to Pain. Pain have had their, a myriad of problems. Losing players here, there, and everywhere. The only one that they've basically kept is that of Big Azera. I mean, I'll show you even here on their team page. You can see just the roster changes that they've gone through. All of these guys that they had, like Zevi, Skulls, Hardzau as well, PKL, Nekiz, of course, is on Legacy. So many guys who have come through this roster, and they're constantly being dropped here, there, and everywhere. It's tough, man. I really do feel for Big Azera. Obviously, a stalwart of the team. 5 years he's been on Pain. The longest serving member by over double the amount of the next, which is the coach, Rix. Yeah, this team, I got a feel for them. If you had Pain with the kind of Skulls, Zevi, PKL, Hardzau, however, whichever iteration kind of included Zevi and Skulls, I'm loving this team. There's, this is a team that can and should qualify, but it's not. And it really, I think, can be a bit of an issue for them. As you can see, Locke's been playing quite well. He has been putting up decent performances. The caliber of competition, you got to take that into account. It's not exactly been phenomenal, so don't read too highly into that. The one guy I think that could be quite exciting is NQZ. Obviously, this guy was part, similar with Try. They had that swap deal from 9Z to Double O Nation, the Brazilian iteration of Double O Nation. It didn't work out for either of them, basically. Try then went back to 9Z. Yeah, they've been all over the place, 9Z, as you can tell. NQZ is still so young. I think he's only 19 years of age. He's actually a very talented AWPer. He's definitely somebody to keep an eye on at the RMR. I don't know whether Pain as a whole are going to do all that well, but Enkiji's a real good talent, man. He's a really solid player. I definitely think he can put up some numbers. And especially because he's probably going to be given all the space by Big Azera. So there's a world, man. There's a world in which they can make things work for them. Now, Red Canids. This team is super interesting. For me, unironically, this team is a dark horse. I want to throw out there. I could come back to bite my words here, but this team really do feel like a dark horse to me. Venom's era is really, really exciting. This guy kind of came out of the woodwork and has started putting up serious numbers for Red Canids. And as a name, they've started to make, a real decent name for themselves, domestically speaking. Hardzao, as we kind of already previously mentioned with Pain, is a real talent. Nighton as well, of course, that's probably a name that a few of you at least will recognize, who's been in and around the upper echelons of that South American scene. And same with Davideus, man. This team is really, really exciting. I genuinely think they could be a dark horse of this tournament. Qualifying, it's a big ask. Let me not beat around the bush, but can they get wins under their belt? Absolutely. Can they push towards, some of those bigger names? Can they push them, far in games or series? Yes, I genuinely think they could. So keep an eye out for Red Canids. This team is pretty cool. I do worry a little bit about Destiny mechanically at times, but overall, I'm a fan, man. I'm going to throw them out as my dark horse coming into this one. A team that I'm not throwing out as a dark horse is NRG. They've got the invite, of course, via Rocket's disqualification due to a myriad of cheating. For those who don't know, just a TLDR, Emiya, who was playing on this team, got banned on FACEIT. The assumption was wall hacking, as he's already been banned for wall hacking once before. He had a 2-year ban, which ended in 2023 for wall hacking. Then he got banned again, like a week and a half before the RMR. So yeah, man, just completely, you hate to see it for the rest of the Rocket team. But realistically, did some of them know? Probably. A lot of them, their ratings have looked pretty damn good, man. So, I'm just throwing out my tinfoil hat here. We'll keep out the speculations. They also had Psycho, the ex-Akuma coach, as their coach, who was talking in games, which is completely against Valve rulings. Apparently, they did it all the way through the RMR, all the way through the quals. And, credit to the players, they came out and admitted this. It wasn't found out, or it wasn't, the admins didn't catch it or anything. They came out and admitted it and said it didn't feel right. So credit to them, but, it is cheating. Fundamentally, absolutely deserve to be disqualified. Good riddance. NRG, I looked a little weird. Dabs actually looks back a little bit. Dabs doesn't actually look terrible, in all fairness. He seems to be kind of with it. Hex has his moments as well. Fair play. I think OC is still the bright light on this team, but NRG have not looked good as a team. The names are good, which is the annoying thing about NRG. This whole kind of grandiose reveal of, yeah, we're coming back and we're going to, start to fight at the top end of NA. It hasn't happened. They've looked a little a little rough, little kind of little janky, to say the least. Qualification not look good. I spoke about kind of Elevate taking down NRG at the Blast quals, but none of the quals have gone well for them. They really have looked all of the place. They didn't even qualify to this, to be honest, right? So that says it all. And you can take a look here, right, at the run they had. It wasn't exactly the hardest, all things considered. 16-14 of a badass to start was great. Double OT lost to Complexity, fair enough. Regulation lost to Nouns. They beat Loss, no one cares. And they lost 2-0 to Rocket. Now, maybe there is the world in which we can talk about, was Emiya cheating in that game? So would NRG maybe have won it? It's all speculation. We don't know, right? But NRG have still not looked great. I think that's the main talking point here. And I don't know how I feel about them coming towards this. They could surprise. All these guys have all played on LAN before, right? This is the main thing. They've all are LAN experienced enough to a point where we can sit here and say, okay, well, at least they're not going to get the nerves. But as a team online, they've not looked great. So we'll keep an eye out for them. We'll see. Moving on towards Boss. Now, of course, for Boss, had a tragic loss not that long before the RMR, about a month ago now with Cynic. Obviously, a huge loss. He was massively important towards Boss. Ex-Nouns player as well. So for the North American scene as a whole, this is, it's a huge loss for him. And, you really got a feel for the team here. They didn't have a lot of time to find a sub for not only the Blast call, but then the RMR. And, thankfully, PGO gave them that emergency sub, and they brought in Pernalone. Now, I think Pernalone is absolutely the best person they could have brought in. A myriad of experience, somebody that can be reliable in a lot of situations. I don't know what he's going to look like in terms of his role specifically. They've had now enough time to get it all figured out. But, yeah, man, it really is such a huge loss for this team. We'll see what happens coming into it. I wouldn't expect too much. They haven't looked great online. Obviously, they're not expected to in the way, because they've gone for this, this change out of nowhere. But I wouldn't have them coming into RMR expected to be near that top 5. I'd love for it to, the story and the narrative would be amazing if they could, kind of in his memory. But just being realistic, I'm not too sure. Big fan of Darty, though. Not only a great player, arguably one of the greatest haircuts in professional Counter-Strike. If you think Holzerks is good, check out Darty's. Doubled it easily. Moving on to the final two, the penultimate team, Legacy. Honestly, name value-wise, don't sleep on Legacy. Obviously, the only issue I actually have, weirdly enough, is coldzera. Now, that might sound quite outlandish, but Cold looks a little past it, but he's still primarily AWPs in this team, which I know it's a very classic thing to have that AWP IGL. The South American scene absolutely love it. I do worry about coldzera in terms of him, on his own. Neck is, of course, another Pain graduate from that team. Duma, Bart, and Lato have all looked pretty damn good. Lato in particular is somebody that I want to keep an eye on. If he pops off, and if Lato plays the way he can, same with Duma as well, they both can make a lot of damage. Neck did do a lot of damage when he's on Pain. It's taken him a bit of time to adjust to Legacy, but I think overall this team could cause problems. Now, I wouldn't say they're guaranteed to qualify. Can they? Maybe. I wouldn't actually, say it's impossible. It's still improbable, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. So keep an eye out, man. I'd like to see Legacy do a little numbers. I'd like to see, coldzera roll back the ears a little bit. I'm not going to bank on it, but, it'd be cool. It'd be cool. And the final team, that of ODDIC. I think it goes without saying that ODDIC are the massive underdogs in this team. There is a couple of redeeming factors. Turtle, very solid rifler, very reliable, playing on a lot of teams, like MIBR, for example. He's actually a very decent player, somebody who is kind of looked quite highly upon, domestically speaking, within South America and, of course, Brazil, on a more kind of niche factor. And Woody as well, man. Obviously, Woody had his problems. Let's not beat around the bush. But in terms of an IGL, in terms of just a raw caller, Woody is a good caller. There's no two ways around it. This guy can call a great game. He just sometimes can't play a great game. You hate to see it. You hate to say it. But it's true, right? He statistically was not great when he was playing up at that tier 1 level. And MRBR trying to make moves and numbers. It weren't working well. It wasn't going great. He's not great with the AWP. I'll stand on business, right? I'm going to sit on that throne. But this guy, I still think, domestically speaking, is one of the best callers in South America. So keep an eye on him. Overall, just to wrap this up quite quickly, been waffling for like about 30 minutes now. Final things. Teams that I think will make it through. If I had to pick my 5, Complexity, Furia. Now, I know Furia would be a little rough. I still think domestically they're going to be fine. I can't see them. I can't fathom Furia not making it. You know what I mean? Like, they always do. That's the way I'm going to go about it. So, Complexity, Furia, I think yes. Liquid, yes, as well. I think those 3 feel, for me, surefire. Then it gets a little weird. I want to say Nouns as my 4th team. I want to go Nouns. I like this team. I'm a big Marquee fanboy. So, I like this team. And then the choice feels, honestly, between MIBR and between Imperial. And unironically, I want to go Imperial here. So I'm going to go as my 5. Complexity, Furia, Liquid, Imperial, and Nouns. I think Imperial and MIBR may be a little bit interchangeable, but I'm still sticking down. I'm sticking with it. I'm going to go with them. I want to see Decency and No Way play well on LAN. I'm going to finish off, of course, as we've started doing, with a little bit of fantasy, right? Fantasy has been a bit of a fun one for us. Now, there's a couple of players who I think are what I would call locks. Is it worth making the gamble on a Liege? Unironically, I think yes. I think Complexity probably should go 3-0. I don't think they should have any problems. So I feel like he's a worthwhile gamble. There's not actually that many golds as well. There's a Liege, Keserato, Insani, Naf, and that's it, right? There's no more. So I don't want to go Naf, and I'll explain why in a minute. Insani, I have the risk of MRBR not making it through, which worries me. And Keserato, now I could go Keserato. He's cheaper, but there's a higher risk of him not performing well compared to a Liege, who kind of feels like he's guaranteed to perform well. So for me, I'm going to Liege. My second one, Twists. All day. All day. Now, that's a pretty decent start, right? Throwing it back, as they would say, right? We'll throw back to those 2 players together. This is, for me, what feels like a good start. I like Twist a lot. Twist has been put on numbers. If you look at recent performances for Liquid, he's so crucial, a lot of wins. Naf obviously is as well, and statistically, as you can see, a bit better. However, the price difference between the two, and of course, the options that you can work without it, feel like it's better to go Twists here and say Naf probably will at times top that scoreboard or do better, but Twist is still so reliable. And I would pick him, myself personally, preferably over Yakinda. I'd always going to bank on Twist. He still is that guy. He's still got it about him. So I would go him. Now, moving on towards my next player, I already mentioned his name, already sung his praises. We're going Marky. We have to go Marky. The king, the legend. Marky for me is, I feel at that sort of price range, 193k is so undervalued. If Nouns make it through, and I think they can make it through, I genuinely think that he can be the difference maker. Right? I really think he could be the one to, you know, excel this team forward. So I am a huge fan of Marky. I have been for a long time. I think he's super reliable. I'm going to lock him in. I'm going to find our final couple of players. Now, I had a couple of different ways I could go about this, but this is the one that makes sense to me. JT, and then put him on IGL, guarantee wins. That doesn't feel too bad, all things considered. That feels like a relatively solid position to go in, right? JT and Elige, both of them should do well. JT actually doesn't even frag that badly as well anymore these days. So I'm going to go with JT. I don't feel like that's terrible. I'm going to finish it off. Now, we don't have a lot of choices. Let's not beat around the bush here. Def, hard no. That's like picking Advent over towards the RMRs in Asia. And if you did it, you're trolling. I love Def. He's from the UK. I think he would admit that mechanically he's past it, right? I think he'd be more than happy to admit that. We don't really have a lot of choices, as you can see. And the other one is Neckers. Neckers is all that's left. I think Neckers can do some damage, right? I don't think Neckers is a terrible pickup. I know he may look bad on paper, but, you know, it's a lesser of two evils is how we're going to call it. So this is what we're going to go with. In terms of roles, IGL there feels like a bit of a given. Neckers is a bit weird, and we'll come back to him. Now, Twists. I wanted to give Twist the leeway in terms of roles. There's a few different ways. I want to... Multi-fragging is a potential. Headshot Machine is pretty good as well. See, Stat Hunter I don't want to go purely because of that risk of Naf, or actually, in all fairness, Kindar doing quite well. Headshot Machine is not a bad idea. Pretty damn crisp. Does it quite a lot. So not the worst way to go about it. Then we'll go towards Elige. Now, Elige, where do we want to go with him? Basically, I'm going to play off percentages, I think, here. It's probably the best way to go about it. Entry frag is not a bad way to go about it. Multi-fragger was the thought. But maybe we go entry just on the fact that, well, he does do that, and he's pretty fucking good at it. Attack is the only other thing that is a potential as well, but obviously limited. I'm going to go entry fragger. I think that's probably not a bad way to go about it. And then we limit ourselves. The only big thing is we don't have an AWPer, right? Of course. Understandable, but I think sometimes you got to take the risk a little bit to a degree to see what you can do. I think we'll go with that. Attacker, a Marky. It leaves Neckers as our last. Obviously, no percentages on the AWPer. We don't have one. We're not going to be having one. Support's not actually the worst thing. It does actually throw a good amount of utility. Or Noob. Now, Noob feels weird, but it's rough. So, if he gets below 0.85, below 1.1... Oh, no. So, below 1.12... Oh, if he gets 1.12 or above, he gets a penalty. So this now is where I get a weird position, because I could go support, which he does actually get, you know, look, he gets the small average over half the time. I think banking on his downfall feels rough, but then he could actually just fucking bot out. maybe we go with it. Man, this is a tough call, actually. It's a really tough call. I think I'm going to play off the back of the small percentage here of the small trigger rate. I think I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with sport there. And that's how we're going to lock it in. Ladies and gents, that is going to be the fantasy team we're going with. Big Days Money crew, Elige, Twist, Marky, JT, and Neckers as our lesser of two evils. And with that being said, we are done and dusted. Thank you very much for joining us. If you are watching this, go and check out the Americas RMR. It will be happening at the time of release over the next couple of days. I don't know, a couple of days. Yeah, this video goes out on Wednesday. And the RMR starts on Friday? Thursday? Who knows? I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. So check it out. You don't want to miss it. You're going to see me casting it with the main man, Cody. So yeah, don't want to miss it. Either way, thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure. Been a bit of a long one as well. So thank you for sticking around. And until next time, I'll see you post RMR. See you soon.